Hi folks, so it is time for me, excuse me, I'm still testing positive, but much more lightly on the COVID test, and contrary to my coughing fit that just started this video, I am much better and on the road to recovery. Indeed, yesterday I think would be the first day when I could conceive of being in some form of communication with people, largely through returning phone calls and things like that, and just kind of generally doing so. And so I'm hoping prior to that I really have not been very functional at all, the fatigue and the coughing, etc., etc. So happy to report that I'm on the mend, and apart from the coughing and the fainter positive test result as of today, I expect that, as the week rolls on, that hopefully by the time I get to the weekend or early next week, I'm assuming and hoping that I will test negative. We'll see how it goes. Now, 3 videos must be done and need our attention. This first one is more of a compass video, but important all the same. I still feel compelled to readdress. I know I've done the last 3 videos about this, and please do check out the last couple of videos, or at least the last video I did on Mars retrograde in Gemini. It's an important energy wherever Mars is, even if it is alone in that part of the chart. Even if it is the sole transiting planet in that part of the chart, a lot of our energy and attention goes where Mars goes. So the Mars retrograde in Gemini is important transit, and you'll understand why as I do these next 3 videos. The link that I mentioned between Mars's transit in Gemini and the way that it potentially supports the Taurus North Node eclipses, the way it supports the awkward relationship between Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus and the North Node in Taurus so far, and the way it confronts Neptune and Pisces, very important. And I think the importance of this is going to be borne out even as we consider the Capricorn new moon and the planets that are currently transiting Capricorn. That'll be the third of the videos I do in quick succession. So bear with me and we'll build on that. The first thing, I want to mention 2 things here. I will add a little bit more to the Mars in Gemini in a second, but the very first thing that I want to alert you to is that the 25th of December, Christmas Day, is 2 months after the solar eclipse in Scorpio on the 25th of October. So indeed, the week before the 25th, which is what we're currently in, starting, I would say, yesterday, day before yesterday, and the week after the 25th are important markers for, excuse me, from an eclipse perspective. Important markers from an eclipse perspective. And the Scorpio solar eclipse, October 25th, next marker December 25th, next marker March the 5th, and then a corresponding lunar eclipse, full moon lunar eclipse on May the 5th. So it's an eclipse of release, the Scorpio eclipse, wherever Scorpio sits in your chart, the house it occupies, what that has stands for, something there needs to be released in conjunction with the developments that need your attention in the Taurus part of your chart. So even if you were to look back at the Scorpio eclipse, golly, we had a Scorpio eclipse in, bear with me, I was not expecting to bring this up, but I do have the information right here. We had an eclipse in Scorpio, there's some truth to this, on May the 15th of this year. A full moon lunar, that was the first of the Scorpio eclipses. Full moon lunar eclipse on May the 15th. So week before, week after May the 15th of this year, March the 15th, week before, week after of this year, October 25th, of course, the solar eclipse in Scorpio, December 25th, and then in 2023, March the 5th and May the 5th of 2023. Now, similar themes may come up, and it could be that the things that are coming up have a Taurian feel to them. So what I mean by that is eclipses happen in opposite parts of the chart. So if you know where Taurus sits in your chart and the house it occupies and what that house stands for, it could be that what shows up around, strangely enough, these Scorpio eclipses are actually Taurus developments related to where Taurus sits in your chart, but in a way that requires you to release something in the Scorpio part of your chart. Archetypally, it is a push towards greater independence and away from codependency. Move towards your own sense of self-worth and how that self-worth translates into your own earnings, and releasing an area of shared resources, or where your resources are pooled excuse me, or enmeshed excuse me, enmeshed with others. Okay, in Scorpio, the sign of Scorpio archetypally is a sign that stands for our emotional involvements and the financial consequences of those involvements with others. How dependent are we on others? What are those dependencies? Where do they turn into codependencies? Where do we become very enmeshed, where it's hard to disentangle? And where do those enmeshments affect our ability to independently pursue what we want to pursue, and translates our skills and talents into abundance, independent abundance? And the sign of Taurus very much stands for our resources, our paycheck, our sense of self-worth, and our ability to translate that sense of self-worth into a form of abundance. In an ideal world, there's a healthy balance between the two, but those of us who walk this planet know that, balance is something we strive for, and imbalance tends to be more of the pickle we find ourselves in more often than not. So it's a shift away from things like, well, just enmeshments with others. I don't want to give specific examples in this video necessarily, because it just becomes, to move towards independence. So when you look at even things like marriages or partnerships or family dynamics, or dynamics with people where money is tied, it's something there may archetypally need to be released in order to facilitate your own independent pursuit of using your own skills and talents and sense of self-worth to translate it into your own independent abundance. Now, those are the archetypes. More important than the archetypal eclipse pattern that I mentioned, and more important than that is the houses that Taurus and Scorpio sit in. And you're required to lean into the house of Taurus and release something in the house of Scorpio. Be careful of, when I say release, you may not have to release something physical. It could be an attachment to something, an attachment to a way of being, an attachment to something that is no longer, that may be subconsciously comfortable, but is no longer serving you. And it's very Scorpionic, that, in terms of codependencies, where we become really comfortable in a pattern, but it is no longer serving us. The universe is giving us signs and signals that we need to kind of lift ourselves out of that and move towards our own independence. And so if you think of the Scorpio eclipse as a kind of arc, or actually it's not an arc, it's kind of an escalation. It's like something that continues to go up. So you could think of October 25th as starting something, December 25th, the week before, week after, where we are, as a step 2. March the 5th, week before, week after, definitely a strong step 3. And by the time you get to May the 5th, it may be that things are, for some people, that May the 5th date is when things might culminate, the week before, week after. But I find that by the time things get to a lunar eclipse, it's like it expands. The energy becomes more diffuse. Whatever it is that's trying to culminate has culminated by then. That March 5th to May 5th date of next year is when things will come into form with this release, whatever it is that this release is trying to mean. And I'm just trying to think, is there anything else I want to add to that? No, just pay attention and remember, some of the stuff that comes up, interestingly, this interplay between the 3 or 4 things I want to talk about is very powerful right now, because the Mars in Gemini, the eclipse of release, the Capricorn planets, Jupiter's transit from Pisces to Aries, all these transits are supporting each other. And they're all supporting the Taurus North Node eclipses, the North Node transit, and Uranus in Taurus in some way. So I'll continue to develop that over the next 3 videos. But this one point I definitely want to remind you of and emphasize. There's a lot going on astrologically. And one of the things is that the eclipse axis is activated this week and next week. So portents of change, news about mortality when it comes to other people, things shifting. It could just be news at this point in time. It could just be invitation. Eclipses can even bring offers and culminations that can create a certain amount of change or bring about the next chapter or things like that. So just be on the lookout for that. Now, when it comes to Mars and Gemini, in my last video that I did it instinctively, but when I was thinking about doing that video, I had made certain notes. And these notes have pretty much, I think, all been covered in my last couple of videos, but I'm going to repeat them. As a reminder, Mars entered Gemini on August the 20th. It went retrograde on October the 20th. It goes direct on January the 12th and leaves Gemini and enters Cancer on March the 25th. And during this time, it squares Neptune 3 times. 2 of these squares have already happened, and it trines Saturn 3 times, and 2 of these trines have already happened. And there's a link between Mars's transit in Gemini supporting the Taurus North Node eclipses through the trine with Saturn, and also a kind of a more historic kind of gaslighty confrontation that might even go back to 2014, 15, 16 with Neptune and Pisces, where people or situations related to the Gemini part of the chart could be separate groups of people come up again, need to be dealt with regard to whatever's been going on in the Pisces part of your chart, where there could be a certain amount of loss or fogginess or theft or deception or betrayal or nebulousness. The words with Mars in retrograde, I'd mentioned Mars is the male planet. And when Mars is retrograde, the first word that came to mind is retreat, which I talked about in the last video. And also, it could mean that when Mars goes retrograde, excuse me, and this is very relevant to right now, when we look at the transits in Capricorn that are currently happening, which is going to be a video that I do, and the 3rd video that I do, the reemergence, resurrection of something from the past coming up. And if you know where Gemini sits in your chart, now, this reemergence of people could be related to whatever is happening in whatever needs to be confronted in the Pisces part of your chart, but it could also be people who are associated with growth in the Taurus part of your chart, in relationship with the Aquarius part of your chart, okay, because Saturn's in Aquarius and that's what's going to get trined. So a reemergence of issues related to people or situations related to the Gemini part of your chart. Mars retrograde could, as we retreat, as we step back, we may see more coming up here. Past people, past issues coming back to be revisited. I'm going to develop this more, but I want to just go ahead and mention that. And as I said to you, it may well be that a lot more gets dealt with after Mars goes direct in the middle of January. Remember that Mercury goes retrograde in Capricorn on the 29th and goes direct on January 19th. So as Mars goes direct and Mercury goes direct, you know that's the Cancer full moon on January the 6th, followed by Mars going direct on the 12th and Mercury going direct on the 19th. And when it comes to the Gemini part of your chart and some of these issues taking us into the end of March, that's when a lot of things may actually start to get confronted and action starts to get taken again with this retreat portion. Retreating is also an action, as I mentioned before, and there's just an energy anyway of passive aggressiveness in the air and a desire to keep cards close to the chest. But past issues may get brought up in ways that are not quite as direct as they could be, and sometimes Mars retrograde does allow us a white flag type energy to try and it could be that things are brought up more indirectly in a way that leads to a resolution. So just will not surprise me at all if past issues, especially related to even going back to the beginning of 2022, with that first Mercury retrograde between Taurus and Gemini, people associated with that period of time in January and February, if that starts to come back in some way, to be revisited, will not surprise me at all. And also, as I said, confronting whatever's going on with that Neptune and Pisces square. I'm just seeing if there's anything else. Communication, it's retrograde in Gemini. A lot of the action that occurs in Gemini is through mental cognition, processing, figuring out what's going on, and communication. Verbal, throat chakra, written, speaking, communicating, arguing, trying to clear the words play a big part in whatever it is that we're trying to resolve. Written words, contracts may even flow into legalities to some extent. So that may be where a lot of battle lines are drawn or messages are sent. Retreat, regroup, observe. There's no reason to not be in conversation, actually, or even, I would argue, in conflict. If the conflict or the way of being in conflict allows the air to be cleared and reach some sort of a resolution. Whatever that resolution is, you don't have to wait till Mars goes direct to January 12th to start to clear the air and take action then. Use your instincts to guide you to see whether the slightly passive-aggressive way or outbursts or clearing the air can lead to kind of a more kind of retreaty white flag way of communicating what was on your mind or is on your mind or someone else's mind, to see if it can be put on the table, so at least you know what you're dealing with and what you're looking at. The energy is likely to be a little less edgy, even if it has edgy moments, okay? And as I said, it could be that the way in which some of the conflict is playing out right now till January the 12th has a sense of stealth to it, or backstabbiness to it, or behind-the-scenes-ness to it. Things that presented or they emerge after a certain amount of behind-the-scenes activity. There may be a lot of people talking about each other behind each other's backs going on as things are trying to get resolved or come to the surface. I have done a couple of videos on Mars retrograde, so you're welcome to look at those, the last couple of videos. Be on the alert for the fact that it's an important couple of weeks now for the eclipses, so pay attention to things that are occurring this week and next week, and then 2 more videos to follow in relatively quick succession, because I am going to be doing a new moon in Capricorn video, which will be the 3rd video, and I am undecided yet whether I'm going to wait for the new moon to happen on the 23rd to do it or if I do it before. Irrespective, I've at least done this video. Let me go ahead and publish it, and then we can move on to the next 2. Thanks. If you found it useful, comment, share, like, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button, the wiggly one on top, to be notified whenever I do new videos. Thanks for your help. Take care.